So what's going on in the news cycle today?
A few things happened yesterday.
What? Say it again?
A few things happened yesterday. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, what was yesterday?
The Eli Lilly report coming out that they are asking to be a preventative with the infusion.
Right, and listen, it's a tremendous, you're talking about the antibody therapeutics?
Yes, sir.
Right. So the antibody therapeutics are extremely helpful. We did talk about that a little bit when I was in Houston earlier this week. If anyone wants to ask a question about those antibody therapeutics, more than happy to talk about it. So you said you're ready to go?
Yes.
All right, listen, I want to thank everybody for being a part of this here today. We have with us today Director Steve McCraw. He's the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety. I especially want to thank the DPS for everything that they've been doing because in addition to their traditional duties of what DPS does, they've had to add on top of that things like securing the state capitol multiple over the course of the past year to make sure they secure the border, as well as ongoing efforts to collaborate with local cities across the entire state, helping those local cities remain safe. So Director McCraw, thank you in particular for everything that you and your team have done over the course of the past year to help keep Texas safe. We also have with us, we have Mitch Landry, who's Executive Director for TMPA, Marvin Riles, the President for CLEAT, Manny Ramirez, the President for the Officers Association, Comal County District Attorney Jennifer Tharp, Joel McNew, who is the President for Safe Horns. We have B County Sheriff Alden Southmaid, and we have with us Kevin Masters, who is from the Governor's Public Safety Office, but also a retired Deputy Chief for the Kansas City Police Department. Before you all came in, we had a very robust discussion today about several issues that are incredibly important to make sure that in the state of Texas we are doing everything we possibly can to keep our fellow Texans safe. And let me start with this, and that is I want to start expressing my gratitude for law enforcement officers across the entire state of Texas. These brave men and women, they put their lives on the line every single day to keep Texans safe, and unfortunately all too often, sometimes paying the ultimate sacrifice in fulfilling their duties. So when you consider the magnitude of what our law enforcement officers do to maintain safety in our communities, candidly, it is shocking that some cities are turning their backs on our law enforcement officers. Cities across the country like Minneapolis, like Portland, like Seattle, and unfortunately even like the city of Austin here in the state of Texas are doing things like defunding law enforcement agencies. In Texas, we do not turn our backs on our law enforcement officers. Texas is a law and order state, and we are going to ensure that we keep it that way. Defunding the police is reckless. It endangers the lives of people in communities across the entire state. We cannot and we will not allow cities like Austin to defund the police. Texas must set the example for the United States of America in what we do to not only support law enforcement, but to fully fund law enforcement agencies. Cities that defund police, they make it physically impossible for citizens to live safely. That is why we must make it fiscally impossible for cities to defund police. This session, Texas must pass laws that give cities a clear choice: either fulfill their duty to keep their residents safe or lose access to all of their tax revenue. We're working with partners not only here today, but also partners in the Texas legislature to hold cities accountable and to ensure that law enforcement officers have the support and the resources they need to protect our communities. Now, in addition to this focal point that I've had, and we continue to advance, and we will pass legislation on this session to prevent cities from defunding police, there was another issue that we discussed today that also involves public safety in Texas, and that is bail reform. I want to thank Senator John Whitmire as well as Representatives Kyle Cassell and Andrew Murr for their leadership on bail reform, and I look forward to working with them during the course of the session on advancing the Damon Allen Act in Texas. The fact is that Texas has a broken bail system that allows dangerous criminals to go free. The Texas Department of Public Safety trooper Damon Allen was shot and killed during a traffic stop. His accused killer was out on bail when he should have been behind bars. I'm working with the legislature to develop strategies to end the revolving door bail system that we have in Texas. We discussed today 3 criteria as well as additional ideas that we look to plugging into strategies that will turn into legislation. Among the ideas include expanding the criteria that judges must consider when setting bail. Another is increasing the qualifications of the judges who are eligible to set bail. Another is making sure that we have a uniform court management system so that judges have the full criminal history of a defendant when setting bail. Judges setting bail must actually look at the system and all of the information in the system before they set that bail that could possibly release a dangerous criminal back on the streets like the killer of Damon Allen. Working together, we will ensure that we keep Texas a law and order state, and we will support the brave men and women of law enforcement, and working together, we will keep Texas a safe state. Well, and now let me hand it over to Director McCraw with the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your leadership on this and other issues. It makes a difference, I can tell you that. And as you saw from our law enforcement partners here today, it's an honor to be able to address some of these particular things. Texas has extraordinary challenges in the law enforcement profession and public safety. We see today, one, radicalized violent extremists, mob violence, threats to life that we're dealing with, attacks, mass attacks on public places, transnational crime, Mexican cartel drug trafficking, sex trafficking, methamphetamine has been infused and reinfused in the communities. All of these things, and they are confluence of factors and some other factors conspire to increase the violent crime throughout the state. I know that's a major concern of yours. You've made it very clear your mandate is every Texan has a right to live secure and safely in their community, bar none, no exceptions. And our mandate from you and as the Department of Public Safety is to do what we can to support our local law enforcement partners in all they do to protect their citizens and protect the state of Texas. And with these challenges, there's vulnerabilities. And it's not just in terms of the public safety challenges as it relates to the threats itself, but some of the vulnerabilities is what the governor's talking about and addressing that. I know there's some other professionals in here who can address those aspects of it that reflect on Damon Allen, because it's not just Damon Allen that we lost. We continue to lose citizens daily as a result of individuals, small percentage of individuals responsible for the greatest percentage of crime, violent crime. And the governor is very insistent that we do something about it, collectively. And thank you, Governor, for the opportunity to be here today and work with our partners. And that's it.
Thank you, Director.
Appreciate it.
And now we have Mitch Landry, the Deputy Executive Director for TMPA.
Governor, thank you for having us today. We've spent an hour here today talking about how to keep our communities safe, and I can tell you on behalf of our over 30,000 police officers around the state, they go to work each and every day to make sure that their communities are safe. And so the issues that we've talked about today just will reinforce back home, give us the tools in our toolbox to make sure that these communities are safe. And Governor, we appreciate you.
Sure. Thank you. And now Marvin Riles, the President of CLEAT.
Thank you, Governor, for having us here. I'm happy that we were able to address 2 issues that are important. As you all know, police have to always keep up with the trends of whatever's going on. It never fails. If something goes on, police have to be there, whatever. But but we have to always be able to be prepared to address whatever issues comes to us. And we're living in times right now where we're all experiencing things that we haven't encountered before. I think that to protect the local all law enforcement from defunding and on bail reform is a great 2 steps forward to protecting the citizens of Texas. I look forward to helping the governor with the legislative session and with the locals to help get these items passed. You know, other than facing these 2 issues or whatever, we also have to face the COVID issue ourselves. We're constantly, you know, having to deal with inmates that have COVID and responding to calls with people with COVID. So it's comforting to know that even you're going through this or whatever, that you do still have some backup on issues, that you do have backup on issues such as bail reform and on defunding. So thank you, Governor, once again, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marvin. Now we'll take a few questions.
Governor, House Democrats have presented a list of police reform processes, ideas for this session, including some training reform, some responsibility things. Along with what you're saying, do you support some of the items that are on the list that the House Democrats have presented?
I look forward to seeing that list. I will tell you in advance that I've already talked about the importance of training reform. Listen, we want to make sure that our officers have the best training and the best equipment possible to make sure that they can do their jobs safely. And so I fully support training reform and as well as additional funding for training.
Governor, after the El Paso attack, you took the task force for domestic terrorism and extremism. Would you classify what happened at the U.S. Capitol, domestic terrorism and extremism, and a year later since that task force was formed, what has come out of that?
So we either have or are about to issue our update. I can't remember. I don't know about where we are internally. I can't remember if it was issued or not. Has it? So we're about to be issuing something on it that you will hear about shortly. But bottom line, first, we've assembled all the information, and we're going to be putting out additional information here shortly about that. As far as what happened in Washington, D.C., I have the facts and the information about what happened in El Paso, Texas, and we had multiple roundtable meetings before we made assessments about what happened there. I don't have access to the same facts and information about what happened in Washington, D.C., and as a result, I'm incapable of making the same type of assessment about what happened there as I was about El Paso.
You can't call it domestic terrorism or extremism?
Here's what I call it. I call it acts of crime. And I can easily make that assessment, and as a result, those who did it should be prosecuted for those acts of crime.
Governor, Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio have all increased their spending on the police budget, yet they're seeing pretty big percentage increases in violent crime, and especially overall numbers when compared to Austin. What proof do you have that police funding is directly tied to violent crime rates?
Well, we need to look at this from multiple perspectives. One, you mentioned Dallas and Houston. We have a problem in Dallas where we have a district attorney who refuses to prosecute some people who knowingly commit crimes, and if they steal something for $750 or less, they're going to be set free. That sets a standard and sends a message to the people of that community that some crimes are not going to be prosecuted, and that promotes other people to engage in crimes. With regard to Houston in particular, but we see the same thing in other jurisdictions, we have this bail reform-based challenge where we have a revolving door of very dangerous criminals being let back out on the street, which is why we're talking about bail reform also. In the city of Austin, we know that defunding operations there, whether it be the $30 million that were cut or the non-funding of the cadet class, et cetera, that has repercussions not just in Austin, Texas, but we know from our discussions here as well as elsewhere that it leads to crime in other jurisdictions. Bottom line is this, and that is we are going to make sure that we have fully funded and well-trained law enforcement officers in the state of Texas doing their job to make sure we keep our community safe.
Governor,
Governor, did you discuss homelessness at all in this roundtable? And given your tweet yesterday that if the city of Austin doesn't reinstate its ban, the state will, how would you do that at the state level? And what do you propose to help break the cycle of homelessness? Obviously, it's not working in Austin. What do you propose to get people out of those situations?
Sure. So I did bring up the topic of homelessness for the purpose of explaining to the people here today that homelessness is not part of today's agenda, as you can clearly discern, not only from my tweet yesterday, but from what I've been saying for more than a year now. Homelessness is going to be an issue that will be addressed this session, and there will be a day that I dedicate to spending time with you all, the press, when I talk about what my plan to address homelessness is. But I do expect to announce a statewide plan to address homelessness that will include a ban on camping as well as other ideas to make sure that Texas will be able to effectively and aggressively address the homeless situation.
Last question. Bail reform, what about the people who are locked up who haven't been convicted of crime, but yet they can't afford the bail to get out? A lot of the reform efforts that we're seeing in the legislature is that make sure those people can get out, even if they don't have the funds to make it out.
So-
is there room in your plan for allowing some more flexibility on who has to pay for bail and who doesn't?
Right, so there are multiple aspects about bail reform, and there will be multiple bills about bail reform. One will be the Damon Allen Act that I made reference today and was offered up as legislation last session. And it's going to focus on the issues I've raised today. I've already talked with legislators about additional bail reform-based issues that sound like is what you're talking about. And that would be bail reform for petty crimes or low-level crimes that don't endanger the life or health or safety of anybody else. And people cannot get bail or cannot get out simply because they have no money to get out. And that will be an issue that will be addressed by the legislature separately.
Great, thank you guys. No,
What,
thank you so
just
much.
a few more real quick.
Can you be assured that the DPS is working with FBI to root out any extremist groups here in Texas? And have you had anything you can talk about as far as strategy to
Sure, I was going to say we should let the director answer that question.
Absolutely. And we're working in partners with the FBI and local law enforcement as well to identify radicalized, violent extremists, not individuals only, but organizations. And we've identified several groups that we're pursuing and will continue to do so. They do represent a threat. That's one of the things I mentioned earlier. It's one of the things that the governor gets briefed on regularly in terms of our status, in terms of how we're positioning ourselves to be able to address those threats.
Hey, Governor, you say that you want to make Texas safer. But the fact is we have a 50% higher death rate from firearms in California, a 75% higher death rate from police officers. You may know that, sir. In fact, we were #1 in death of police officers in 2019. So it's great that you say all this, but what are you going to do to actually make police officers safer?
One way we can make them safer is to stop the criminals who are shooting police officers. And that's one thing that we're seeking to do.
In California, they have a 50% lower rate of death through firearms in Texas.
Well, I'm not governor of California. If you let me answer your question,
Okay, go ahead.
I'm governor of Texas, and I'm going to do everything within my power to go after criminals who harm law enforcement officers and prevent law enforcement officers from being shot. Period.
We haven't done it for 4
Period.
years.
But that's why we're doing it this session.
All right.
All right, one last question, guys.
You focused a lot on Austin in this. Why is Austin not here at the table? Have you talked with them? Do you plan on talking with them about these ongoing issues that you have?
So I have had the opportunity to speak with Chief Manley on multiple occasions about this. And what I know is what the city council's position is, and that is not only do they want to defund it, they actually have defunded police in Austin, Texas. And we just made it clear that what they have done with regard to defunding police is unacceptable, and we will make it fiscally impossible for them to continue to defund police in Austin.
Do you still support taking over Austin Police Department?
Say it again?
Do you still support the state taking over Austin Police Department?
So just like with the homeless situation, the issue about having what I categorize as a safe zone will be an issue for another day. What I'm talking about when I talk about a safe zone is there is so much about Austin, which is the front door for the state of Texas, whether it be the Capitol or whether it be the University of Texas. We have people who are coming from across the state, across the country, sometimes across the globe, into this community. And when they come into this community, they need to know that they're going to be safe, and they shouldn't be ambushed by crime that's taken place in certain areas where people quite literally have been ambushed. And we're working on strategies that we will announce later about proposals to make sure that we are able to ensure the safety of people who operate within the Capital Region and the University of Texas region.
All right, thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. If you please go out.